Welcome to Explore, Explain. This is a long-form video and podcast series sharing conversations with data visualization designers and developers from around the world. Each episode explores the detailed hidden thinking behind a single project or a series of related works to explain the what, the why, and the how of the design process. There are some wonderful guests and some wonderful projects to learn about. So let's jump in to today's episode with your host, Andy Kirk.
Thank you ever so much. It's an absolute delight to be here to record a special live edition of Explore, Explain. So my name's Andy Kirk, and it's wonderful to be here in Porto with you all, and also for you watching remotely for this conference, and also in the future, when this becomes a podcast, the listeners, and when it becomes a YouTube video, the viewers. If you are not familiar with Explore, Explain, what the hell is wrong with you? This has been going for 3 years now. You've not had any excuse. It's a long-form series of audio and video episodes where I interview data viz designers, developers, journalists, editors, all sorts of people to learn about the backstory or the behind-the-scenes story for their works. And over the last few years, we've had a bunch of wonderful guests learning so much about their process, about their hidden decisions, about their struggles, about their compromises, about the things that they could have done but didn't do. And this is what many of us are in this for, to learn about the process, not just to see the end point, but to understand the journey that people took to get there. We're into season 4 now, and next week, hopefully, there should be a new episode with a wonderful guest from Mica, who are one of the conference sponsors, Steph Bradley, about her capstone winning project from last year. But today is about Nightingale Magazine, season 4, episode 4. And obviously there is a group of people, the editorial team, that sit behind the work. There's many more contributors as well, who we'll speak to shortly. Only one of those people can join us today. Don't come out yet, Jason. First of all, we've got Claire Santoro. And here's Claire waving. This was the worst 10 seconds of Claire's life, having to record this to a Zoom camera. But Claire is the content editor of Nightingale Magazine. She's an independent information designer with a background in economics and environmental science. So welcome, Claire. We've also got Emily Barone, the managing editor. There's Emily going for the double-hander technique, which I think is quite interesting. Emily's a career journalist and recently sort of taken up this position, replacing Mary. We've also got Julie Brunette. Julie's going for a wild double-hander, and there's kisses being blown there. Julie's the creative director, based in Paris. She can't unfortunately join us today in person or online, but it's wonderful to welcome these three, for whom I've recorded previously Zoom conversations, and I've clipped their best bits that we'll see and hear over the next hour. But the fourth member of the team is none other than the editor-in-chief, Jason Forrest. Can we have a round of applause, please, for Jason on stage? Jason is editor-in-chief. You can take a seat there, please, sir. So that's the full Nightingale Magazine team. And if you've not already seen the magazine, you should do. There are copies, I believe, still available outside to buy at the stall. Jason was selling up until 10 seconds before this the kind of commercial mindset. Thank you, Jason, for joining us today. This is the team. CMYK, Claire, C, Magenta, M, Emily. We've got Y, Citron, yellow, and then Jason is K. McKinsey, we'll work with that. Yeah. So today we're going to learn about the backstory behind these 2 issues of the magazine, and issue 3 is coming out very soon. Again, to learn about the things that we don't know as readers, the sort of struggles, the trade-offs, the challenges, and the moments of delight as well. So we're going to start off by looking at the kind of broader context of the magazine. And my first question, which I'm going to just sort of run past Jason, is what was the origin story? Where did all this come from? Why have we got a magazine now? What was the sort of moment when you thought, you know what, let's do a magazine?
So hi, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for the interview. So it really started with the literal moment that the DVS started. It was like a Slack group. I happen to know the co-founders and Elijah Meeks. I remember writing him, and I even went back and checked this. Like literally, like my 7th message to him was, you know, if this whole thing works, we could make a really kick-ass publication. And he was like, oh, that's the cart before the horse. And I was like, yeah, we can even turn it into a print magazine. And so the truth is that I really had a vision for what could be possible with Nightingale since really the very first moments of the DVS. So they're really, really connected.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen the lineage of the DVS from the community and the sort of Slack environment that everyone's chatting away, and it's brilliantly overwhelming on there. You've got the digital side of the journal, you've got the print journal, you've got events like this spin out, so it's all kind of wonderfully kind of coalescing together. And on that note of vision, and I'll start off with you again here for this, Jason. You spoke in one of the pieces that you wrote about, the kind of reflections about this collective vision to focus on the community, which is what this is all about in the first instance, but to bring a new standard of design and editorial quality to our approach. I mean, what's driving you to bring that? What's your passion behind all this?
Well, I mean, I look at data visualization as a way of kind of embracing the world through design, a certain type of design, and I think that because there is a kind of a data analytics, data science kind of lens that's often applied, a scientific lens that's often applied towards data viz, that it's kind of missing a lot. There's just a whole lot more out there in the world. And so when we first started talking about the print magazine, because I kind of have to like break these things like kind of like in smaller bits. And I remember saying to the editors, I was like, yeah, I want to do a fashion magazine for data viz. And they were like, what? And so I think that's the catch, is that there's just simply so many things that we haven't really explored yet as a community of practitioners, and even just as far as subject matter goes, that other groups have already done. There's lots of different ways of communicating. And as we see at the conference here, there's a number of different ways that people are using similar mindsets to apply towards different types of problems to be discussed.
Right, absolutely. I pose this question to Claire and also to Julie. Let's just hear from them.
Yeah, the process of starting to make a magazine was a tough one.
Imminently.
Because on so many levels, we didn't know what we were doing. There's the logistics of, how do you find a printer? Who prints these sort of small run independent magazines? How do you ship? We knew from the beginning that we wanted to try to ship to as much of the world as possible, because that's always been a core element of the DVS mission. But, how do you do that? So there are all those logistics components, and there's not a how-to guide online about how to print and make an indie magazine. And so we felt like we were pretty much just Googling blindly. But then there was also the trick of we needed money in order to secure all these vendors, but we couldn't sell magazines to people before we could tell them what to expect. And so it was a little bit of this chicken and egg problem where we needed enough of a vision that we could start selling subscriptions, and that people in the data visualization community would trust us that we were going to make something really neat, so that we could bring people on board to design, to print, to handle the logistics of the magazine, so that we could get it back to those people who had already paid for it.
Designing Nightingale magazine was a huge opportunity and an amazing one. And I think there was some kind of maybe pressure, because, you're talking to the DataVis community, that's my peers. And of course, like, the community gives so much that I want something to give back. But at the same time, if I'm honest, like, I didn't really, while doing it, feeling the pressure. I just feel the sheer joy of it. So maybe that's what is showing that Nightingale for me is really like a playground. I feel like it's just so fun. It's just so amazing. And so, yeah, I think the boldness, the affirmative come from that. The fact that when we talked about it with Jason, like the first time we met, he really said that he didn't want something serious. He wants something with a lot of energy, a lot of joy, and a lot of passion. And so I feel that maybe that what the design was about to translate. And so the other part of Nightingale, so the community part and the expertise part. So the expertise, I think you can find it more in the content itself. But for the design, I think we really try to embrace the boldness, the joy, the being together happily, and that's really what I try to translate, and that's what I think I felt when doing it, and I'm really happy if that's what kind of reflects when you're reading it, and that's amazing.
So there's themes there about boldness, community, expertise, all being mixed in together, but also Julie speaks about energy and joy, and I think that's something that you have mentioned to me, that you want to really kind of instigate into this.
Absolutely.
Not make it a job, but make it a pleasure.
Yeah, it's how I don't know, it's how I identify myself at this point. And, you know, when you're exciting and things are fun and they're interesting and you're grabbing people's sense of curiosity, that's when you make an impact. I think we're all in this room and everyone online, our jobs are to fight against the 85-page black and white report with 25 pages of tables at the end, right? Like, and joy is such a part of our day-to-day experience of finding that story, of finding that shape. And then also, like, honestly, I don't really believe in a lot of the data viz rules. And I'm just like, let's just break them all down and figure out how we can apply the whole world of communication theory to our work.
Issue 3 is about guidelines, so that should be an interesting...
Uh-oh, I think I just spoiled it.
So next up the question is, why the hell would you launch a print magazine in this era of digital? We'll come to you in a second, Jason, but first of all, Julie, it was a big print fan, it seems.
So we definitely live in an area where most of everything is digitalized, and that's the main of my job. But still, I believe everyone is obsessed with paper, and publishing something, it's still the biggest achievement you can have in your life. I think not only printing something, but seeing your name print on something and be able to say and see it and show it to other people. And so I think it's really weird because we still kind of fantasize being printed, you know. So for me, that totally makes sense. And as a designer, of course, print is an amazing area to explore. And there's a lot of constraints that you have to work with print, and they're really creative. But I do think that when you do digital visualization, you also have a lot of constraints. So for me, they're just two different sets of constraints, and I love them both, really. But I would say that in print, the fact that you have this final product that you can handle in your hand that really live in the real world, it's one of the most thrilling feeling you can ever have. So I'm super grateful to Nightingale to be able to carry this baby in the world.
So what I appreciate about digital is that you get that instantaneous response from people. Things can go up very quickly, but there is something to be said about the curation of a printed publication and the staying power of having something that is that tangible and can be used not as just a glossy magazine, but also as a resource going forward. Not something that just passes through your Twitter feed, but something that you can pull off your shelf and go back to for inspiration and for ideas.
And that was the thing that Claire spoke about as well, this idea that we've got this sort of fly-by nature of social media. You see all these charts flying through your feed and your timeline, and they don't always stick. You don't always have time to look at them. But there's something about print where there's a degree of archiving, there's a degree of curation, there's a degree of permanence and sort of preservation that digital we can't rely on. I mean, we always remember the era of Flash disappearing, and that kind of killed all those digital pieces. So I guess, you know, anything further to add from your perspective about the beauty of print, the value of print in this era?
So I'm just struck by the fact that I haven't written about this before, but I actually thought about the other idea that really was an input is that I was doing all this research about historic meteorological data, and there were professional societies that made journals that were then put into libraries, and those libraries were, of course, archived, so I could find the thoughts of the moment of a community, historically speaking, from our libraries. And that was actually, that's why it's called the Journal of the Data Visualization Society.
Right.
Is because it actually is a journal of our community's thinking, and that's why we want it to be in multiple different formats.
Absolutely.
Permanence.
Yeah, permanence. And that idea of the community as well, I think, is captured in this next section about who's involved in its production. And we commence with a quite simple quote from Emily: "We are a lean, mean team."
We are.
One of the themes that I picked up from the conversations, which we'll hear from shortly, is it's maybe not always visible on the outside how few people are involved in the
It's true.
in the production. But let's just hear from Claire and then from Julie as well.
At its core, the team that puts together Nightingale Magazine is Jason, editor-in-chief, Emily, the managing editor, me, the content editor, and Julie, our creative director. So we are the 4 people that are really doing the bulk of the work, from finding and commissioning articles to editing them, laying them out, designing them, proofreading, handling all the logistics. So that's the core team. We do have a large group of volunteer editors, and they kind of come and go as their schedules allow, and they'll help with anything from editing articles, occasionally helping with article layout or particular illustrations if we need some imagery to go along with an article that maybe didn't provide its own images. We also commission outside illustrators, so that's something that's important to us, and so they also get credit.
And we've got a video again, Charlotte, from Julie, but this is something that she mentioned, that actually this idea, if people do not see that you have perhaps largely 4 people at the core, that in itself is success. You know, if you saw something that looked a bit shoddy and a bit kind of rough around the edges, you might think, well, there's only 4 people working on this. But I think that's quite important, and she elaborates a little bit further in this little video.
The fact that we're doing this online and quite remote from each other on different time zone, because me being French and in France, that also adds a layer, but at the same time, it's such a unique experience, and that really also make it what it is. I think it's this kind of weird way of creating it, that it's not really conventional, and I like it. It's really weird, and to be honest, it's really tiring, and because we have to collect all these articles, we only have a really short period to actually put the magazine together. We're talking just weeks. And for me, for instance, doing the design, I'm kind of alone on it. So it's like 140 pages that I have to, do in just a couple of weeks. And it's so tiring for me. Like when it's over, I'm like, I need to lie down in the dark for like 3 weeks. But at the same time, it's an amazing opportunity.
And this is something that you wrote. I won't read all that out, but again, what comes across there is that word or phrase, deeply joyful, and also perpetual learning, because as I think Claire mentioned in an earlier video, this is the first time you've all kind of come together to do a magazine. You're not a publishing house. So, what's your reflection on the first couple of issues, let's say for now, how you've collated people together? Not just the core team, but volunteers, editors, sponsors, all these different human involvements.
Well, I think there's a few different answers for that. I'll see if I can pick one. I think the one thing that we've been really mindful of is not just going to the same people over and over again.
Right.
And that also really means the DVS. Like, we're continuously trying to find people from other communities that we can bring in so that we can be a bridge to designers or to data scientists or to, branding directors, any number of different types of people, researchers. And we regularly, I think both the first 2 issues have, I think, 3 or 4 issues from people that have nothing really to do with data viz whatsoever. The new one, the next data viz challenge, the Dear Nightingale, is from an artist.
Right.
Yeah.
So bringing different ingredients from outside this bubble that we're in, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next people are the recipients, the readers, the audience, and who you're trying to reach with this. I'll come to you first, Jason. What would be the kind of characteristic reader that you want this to succeed for?
Well, what's really funny is we've heard stories that like people's parents really like it. Like it's not even people that don't have anything to do with data viz,
That's
right?
so uncool.
No, it's the best because it's like making a great chart. When you make a great chart, anyone can see it and say, "Oh, look at that! Oh, look at this! There's a thing here." And that's what we try to do with Nightingale. Is we want to make something that's interesting, it's captivating, it's bold, it's joyful, and people hold it and they're like, "Oh, this is just a great magazine. Oh, it just happens to be about making charts."
Yeah, yeah. And I think I'm just going to quickly skip Claire's video, but going on to Emily.
Foundation.
Sorry, Claire.
I think right now Nightingale's audience is actually pretty concentrated within the community that is within this room right now here in Porto. But at the same time, there is huge potential for us to expand. Yeah. What I try to focus on right now as we curate pieces for Nightingale and for the website as well is a broader audience. And that is tricky because you do want to make sure that you're catering to the people who have been practicing data viz and are experts in their field and have been doing this for years and will still come to our publication for ideas and news and inspiration, while at the same time being inclusive of the people who are just starting their careers. So it has to do with finding that right mix and making sure there's a little bit of something for everyone. That said, audience is incredibly important. Just as we all know as data viz practitioners that you have to have your audience in mind to be successful with your product, Nightingale is the exact same. We want to make sure that we're not just catering to the entire world, but actually are focusing on the people who will get the most out of this type of publication.
And as Emily mentioned there, its reach potentially is far and wide. It is parents, it is people, kind of passers-by, if you like. And given that the magazine is a mirror or a lens to the community of data viz, that's always growing. And so I guess you'll always be growing your intended audience for this as well.
Yes, and we're actually trying to go deeper too.
Right.
Right, and like I think that there's also a pretty big risk that it just becomes the happy-go-lucky design thing. And so that's why we continuously, the last issue and then issue 3 goes much more deep. And there's some pretty amazing articles about like the relevance of design tokens and data viz. Like this is not like something my parents will get down with. But so there's just a lot of opportunities to talk about more subjects.
And just a quick sort of footnote to this as well. And another thing that Emily mentioned was this fact that given the Data Viz Society is worldwide, and we've seen from the original presentation from Amanda about the breadth of membership around the world. What keeps Emily up at night is trying to find a way to reach people whose first language is not English. And I know that's something that you live with and the rest of the group live with. I mean, I know this is something that in due course you'd like to introduce more into the magazine, but any just sort of comments to the world out there about where that might go going forward?
Absolutely. Write in your native language. We actually had 2 articles in the last issue that came in non-English. We made a translation. We published the translation, and with a QR code, you got the original language. 1, I think, in the first. And of course, on our website, we regularly, I think at some point we counted, we had 17 different languages represented. Right. In their native form. So like, I think that there's like challenges in making sure that the audience for different language communities understand that there's a thing called the Data Viz Society at Nightingale, but we can work on that. And that's definitely a big part of our plan.
Absolutely. From the context to the content, this is the visible stuff that we see in the magazine. And And the first question then is, how is this content shaped? Because obviously each issue has a defined theme. And we've got a little contribution from Claire just to sort of talk about how this is perhaps shaped by you guys.
Our editorial committee also weighs in on some of the direction of the magazine. So even if they're not involved in really the day-to-day production, we do want to make sure that Nightingale Magazine reflects the interests and perspectives of the community. And so things like picking the theme for the next magazine, or the community spotlight, where we ask people to send in little quick photos and some little blurb to just get a glimpse into people's lives around the world. Those are things where we may come up with 3 or 4 ideas within the core team and put it to a vote with our editorial committee, so that we're getting some outside input as well. We also always start off each issue with a big committee meeting, and we like to set up, I know you've seen the image of the Google Jamboard with all these sticky notes where we're brainstorming. And so once we've selected a theme, the committee, and these are all just volunteer editors, anyone who wants will be part of that session where we brainstorm directions that we could take that theme, the types of content we might want to see in the magazine. And that's what really sort of launches everything. So we do have a big group of people who weigh in some way, and we do think it's important to credit them all, because we absolutely couldn't do it without them.
So yeah, we've seen this big Jamboard, so there's plenty of issues there, looking at it.
Plenty of ideas.
Just very quickly, what's the sort of rationale that you kind of end up saying, right, that is the theme that we're going to go with?
I think you want to make a theme that's going to be broad enough where you can really explore in it, right? You want to be able to kind of tick some initial boxes and then kind of challenge what the perception of, let's say, guidelines or culture is. And what was really fascinating in our first editorial meeting about to do the theme for number 1, culture, is almost everybody interpreted the word culture differently. And so we're like, yes, add it in, right? And I think when you get to a theme, we haven't done it yet. To a degree, the guidelines as a theme was a little provocative for ourselves. Like, can we take guidelines and make it diverse enough to be as kind of well-rounded? But yeah, again, I don't think we've really even scratched the surface of what kind of subjects we can talk about in DataViz.
Absolutely, and cleared from the board there. And so that's the themes, but then within the themes we've got the contents and what makes it into the actual magazine itself. So Claire's got some thoughts on this.
Blending different voices and also visual styles is a huge challenge, because we are a data visualization magazine, and a lot of the pieces that people submit to us include data visualizations, but everybody has their own style. And so this was a huge challenge for us with issue 1, and it continues to be now, trying to figure out, how much do we try to edit the pieces so they have a sort of similar tone and voice? How much do we encourage people to follow one particular visual style versus another? And that's really been a huge part of Julie's work as creative director, is to find some sort of brand identity for Nightingale Magazine that's flexible enough to seamlessly integrate visualizations that just have totally different styles. You'll have someone who has a really, bold geometric approach, someone else who has a really delicate and floral approach, and they need to feel like they're part of the same magazine. And so it's the same with the text, where it's a really delicate balancing act between editing the content so it feels part of a professional magazine without losing the voice and the tone of the author.
And just skipping Julie, sorry, Julie. Yeah, thank you. One of the things I really picked up there was the real delicate balancing act that you're trying to play with this editorial role to preserve the voices of those very disparate authors and the disparate type of visual pieces they're referring to, but not smooth it down so much that you got this sort of kind of a homogeneity in the content. Is that something, I guess, that will only get mastered once you've kind of gone through a few cycles and you find that just instinctive position? I think you've done it very well already, but is it a journey?
Yeah, we're definitely figuring it out. Also, I don't really want any of you to know what the next issue looks like. I want there to be a real sense of discovery and surprise. So I don't know. I don't really intend for it to become something that you know.
Right. So it's like the Coca-Cola formula.
Maybe it sounds provocative
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
but it needs to be perpetually surprising.
Yeah, well, that's good perspective.
Because you get bored otherwise.
Right.
That's how it works with humans.
And I guess with that then also comes the sort of rhythm of the content in terms of some things that are bespoke and unique to each issue, some things which are recurring, so you can have that expectation.
Yes.
And again, we've got a couple of contributions from Claire on this as content director.
Before we ever get any submissions, we like to have a rough idea of the types of content that we would like in the magazine. Not necessarily specific articles or specific topics, but kind of the flow. You know, we want this many long articles, this many short articles, this many articles that are, you know, mostly just a visualization with a tiny bit of text describing it. So we have some idea of the rhythm and the pacing of the magazine. And so that's a lot of my work, is to figure out, you know, what flow do we want? And then the balance between submissions and commissioning. We'll often hear from people who are working on submissions, so we have some idea even ahead of the deadline of the kinds of articles that we're going to get. And so we can start to identify areas where we might have a gap. For example, if we don't have any full spread visualizations, maybe we need to go looking for some work that someone has already done and ask them if they'd be willing to write up a little blurb so we could feature it, or ask someone if they're willing to create something specific for Nightingale. So we start to fill in those gaps as we hear what people are working on. We also sometimes just have ideas that we think would fit really well with a particular theme. So for example, in issue 2, I actually worked on a piece where we interviewed Ed Hawkins about the Warming Stripes graphic. The theme there was inspiration. And so kind of immediately once we picked that theme, we thought, wow, we should have something on the Warming Stripes. Yeah, so most of our recurring sections have actually started online, and then we brought them into print. So for example, DataViz Horror Stories, which is one of my personal favorites and I think has also been pretty popular online. That was popular from the get-go. And so we knew that we wanted to carry that through into print because it was something people really seemed to enjoy. One of our big goals, one of DVS's big goals, is to build and support the DataViz community. And we posed this question to ourselves of how do you build community in a magazine? You know, this is something people are going to be reading by themselves at their own homes. So how can we create a sense of community? And so one of the ways that we do that is through all these little community features, 3 questions with, horror stories, the community spotlight. We felt like that was our way to sort of bring people together and give a sense of community. These aren't necessarily the superstars, the people with the name recognition in the field. These are just little glimpses into a day in the life of someone who happens to work on data visualization. And we think they're really neat, really interesting, but that was kind of our way of bringing that community spirit into a print magazine.
And I think on that, there's obviously, so it feels like to me like a chef's role, bringing all these different ingredients in and trying to find the right balance, the right kind of combinations. Again, speaking to the audience that we discussed earlier, there's a lot of people that want different things, they've got different dietary needs, to stretch this metaphor too far. But yeah, any sort of reflections on how this bespoke versus recurring content has been sort of progressed so far?
So the one thing we haven't talked about is when we basically said that we were going to do a print magazine, and everyone's like, wow, that's crazy. And then there was this point where like 3 months in, we're like, okay, what's actually in a magazine, right? And we went to like all these like existing magazines, and we're like, okay, well there's like a light part at the beginning, and there's, you know, it's usually like the meat in the middle, and then there's usually something like a reviews section at the end. And that's when I was like, reviews section. So here we go. If any of you want to write a review for Nightingale about anything, this conference, for example, your lunch, it could be your tote bag. Bring it in. Let's put it in Nightingale. So
there you go.
It's your journal.
There's a challenge.
Yeah.
On to the design. So Julie, as the creative director, has very much sort of led on this, and she's got some wonderful thoughts on the story of the artwork and the art design, the art direction. And it begins...
I haven't seen this. I'm really curious.
Yeah. Well, there's a bit I cut out about the disagreement you've had creatively about the spine art, but we won't go into that right now.
Okay.
So the cover art, the story of these really kind of wonderful front covers. Let's hear from Julie.
For the egg, the voila moment of visualization really strikes upon me too, because all the other iteration that I did was illustration that I created, and I really didn't thought about using an image like a photograph. And I really tried it. I don't know, you know, when it's been like several hours, you're trying something on a project and you're kind of in this zombie mode when you're just doing stuff. And so I just put this image, but just like, you know, throw it there. And I was like, oh my God, but it works. And I reflect on all the past hours I spent trying to do illustration and thinking to myself, okay, that was worthless because obviously this is it. And so when I showed the different covers to the rest of the team, it was the last one that I showed as well. And everyone was like, oh, okay, so nah, not this one. So, and for the juice box, it was a bit different because the first one, the chick one, it's like the image was already done. I didn't create myself. We put the photograph that created it on the magazine. This one, I really did it. Playing with a mock-up. And the way I do it, maybe because I have a literary background, but it's really just thinking of the word. So I was like, inspiration, what is inspiration? What is inspiration? And I thought for me, inspiration is really some kind of intake, you know, like something I would try to feed myself every day. And in France, we have this campaign from the government that said that every day you have to eat 5 fruits et légumes par jour. So, you know, like 5 fruits and vegetables every day. And that's really where it's going. So it starts with actually a salad, like some kind of, vegetables. And then I move on to the juice box. And then I was like, oh yeah, you know, that's inspiration is our energy juice as designer. So it is it. And then it just worked, I think.
And I'll come to you in a second about the artwork, but Julie, I mean, that video is just one clip of a long spiel she gave about the joy, again, that pleasure she had in these iterations. And they've worked so well. And I think what was interesting in how she described that these do not need to necessarily sell the magazine. It's not like a classic magazine you see that in this issue, all these different articles. It's more just almost like an enigmatic piece of art to lure people in, that intrigue, that curiosity. I'll come to you in a second, Jess, about the reflections you have about the other design aspects, because Julie moved on to talk about kind of what shapes the design thinking from her perspective.
As for inspiration for the magazine layout, I, of course, look out to lots of different magazines published here in France or like internationally. In France, we have this really nice library that have a whole section of, you know, American or English magazines. So I often go there. I don't really buy them because they're really expensive, but I will, you know, just spend an hour there, look at everything. And I also draw on a lot of inspiration from other editorial sources, like it can be book, it can be magazine, it can be posters and everything, and trying to bring it back to the magazine. And the way we kind of work it out is that we have those templates that are quite basic and fixed with the number of the columns. And then what I like is bringing disturbances with either kind of moving things around or having those bold fonts for the title that would bring new energy to it. So yeah, that's usually the kind of visual inspiration I have. And I really, really love the design of the 50s, 60s, especially advertisements, because they have this kind of structure when they have something that is not grid-based, but quite kind of straight and square. And then they have this kind of massive thing that will just disturb everything. And that's what creates the visual interest for the people. And I really like this kind of formula.
So yeah, so obviously Julie's led a lot on the art design. What's been your reflection on how that's gone? I mean, from the outside, it looks tremendously successful. It looks so cohesive. as a single publication. It's got a real identity, a style, kind of confidence. But that's not through the lack of hard work.
Well, I'm obviously, you probably all know this, I'm like totally obsessed with DataViz history, and one of the things that I'm most obsessed with, although I have rarely written about this as well, is Fortune magazine. And Fortune magazine, I'll keep it short, I swear, basically was a magazine that brought business writing to the world that didn't exist before that. And they put these conceptual covers on that were very artistic. They literally worked with all these modernist artists, and it was something that just had never really been defined in that way. And that's very much, I mean, literally we made like a big Pinterest board, and Julie and I just threw all the stuff on. It was like, at the end of the day, we had both put like tons of Fortune stuff in. So like, yeah, we'll see how the covers develop in time. But yeah, we like it. We like that it's a little bit of a visual mystery.
Absolutely. On to reflections now, because of course we're through the first 2 issues. You're very much on the verge of issue number 3. But looking back, I asked each member of the team a few quick-fire questions about their reflections. And the first was to ask them about their favorite things, spread, article, feature. So let's hear from Emily to begin with.
My favorite content is definitely Spotlight submissions. When people send in the work that they created and we can lay it out on the page and put it side by side to see how different people in the community approached the same topic. This is like for data is plural, for instance. That is something that we do all the time where we put out a prompt and then just see what comes in, and we line them all up, and they are all amazing. They all blow us away. So
my favorite spread, because I worked on one in issue 2, I feel like I should probably say my own, which was the article on warming stripes. And it was a blast to put together with Cheska Kirkland. She made a fantastic infographic. It was really a joy to work on that.
It's really difficult for me to choose because obviously I have an emotional attachment to all the spreads I design. But weirdly enough, I know it's going to sound like a weird answer, but I actually really love doing the back cover and doing just the back. And sometimes like of course the magazine are kind of on display on my house. And sometimes I just flip it back because all I want to see is actually the back cover. And doing the back cover, I really love it because it's kind of a treat for me because it's like at the end of this really tiring road. And I know like it's going to be soon finished and we're going to be proud of everything we've done. So yeah, it's like, you know, the little candy that you keep for the end because you know that you're going to need it. So I would say that the best part for me.
Seeing the back of it. You sent some suggestions, Jason. You listed many, some of which we've already seen, but again, this reviews thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of a reviews section for a DataViz magazine is just, again, not what you would expect. And there's so much potential there. I put in movie reviews for the last 2, Nope, and Wes Anderson movie. And then there's not a movie review in the new one, so that was like, oh shit, is there time? Can I put one in really quickly? Yeah, I love the reviews.
Just a little bit of me now. My favorite bit was Cheska Kirkland's grandmother.
See?
Delightfully,
people's families.
Yes. Skipping a generation. Delightedly seeing Cheska's article in the magazine. And then a photo of Cheska Kirkland's grandmother looking at the photo of Cheska Kirkland's grandmother in the magazine. And I really hope this becomes a nested feature in every single issue that goes on from this. Next up, the best moment. What's been the best moment? And first up for this, we've got Emily.
My best moment in my role so far has been connecting with the people in the community, having Zoom calls, sometimes just totally out of the blue. We'll just say, hey, do you want to spitball about a story idea? Let's talk through a pitch. Let's work through it. I love those Zoom calls. Feel free to hit me up, by the way, all the time. Just send me a Slack. Let me know you want to chat. I am always available to just brainstorm random ideas. That's my favorite part of the job.
So do that.
Really hard to choose a best moment, but one that comes to mind is when we were trying to figure out the cover for issue 1. And we have these weekly Wednesday morning meetings, and Julie came and she had this design, and we immediately knew this was the one. It was the eggshell cracked open with these little hash marks and these little chick footprints walking away. And we all just laughed. We thought it was hilarious and perfect. And that was such a fun moment.
And sorry again, Julie, I'm just going to skip your video for the matter
You would
of time.
expect that the
Jason's best moment. Another shot of the front cover, but it's the moment, I believe, when you unpacked this issue, give it a good smell, hopefully. So this was just, I guess, the culmination of all that first round of work.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's funny, it feels like almost an iconic photo, but I was literally running to pick up my son from school, right? So I had I was taking a break between 2 Zoom calls, and I was just like, oh shit, I gotta take a picture of this thing. And I remember that we never shared the cover before, right? We didn't unveil it or something.
Yeah.
And so I also like the fact that it's just a part of life.
Absolutely. It fits kind of into that scene quite nicely.
I think the reason why it's so short is because I was just simply walking and typing.
And correctly thinking and worrying about your son. Greatest learning experience. So, kicking off with you on this, Jason. I think it's quite a profound statement, but I think it's quite nice. And that idea that obviously you've had very talented people around you so far working on this, and letting them flourish is part of your job, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the moment of inspiration, which is what Julie was talking about, was she was struggling. She was like, oh, I have this great idea, but I just can't get it right. And then all of a sudden she shared it, and we're just like, oh my God, that's incredible. Claire's Warming Stripe project with Cheska was, again, incredible. The fact that she had done so much research on it and talked to the people that he had been inspired by, so it became a story of inspiration, not only a story of impact. And then in the new issue, I'm telling you, you're going to be sharing with all your friends the 12-page accessibility section that Emily has come up with. It is incredible. Yeah, I mean, there are many more examples of this.
Wonderful. Let's hear from the others.
I think one of the most precious things I learned with Nightingale, because we have this time and constraint that is so pushing, and the printer deadline, is that better done than perfect. I think that's how you said it. And in French we said le mieux est l'ennemi du bien, so best is the enemy of good or something like that. And because if it were only to me, we would never go print. I would continue to change things and trying to make them better and better. But no, actually, you just have to do something. You just have to do the best you can. And there will be things that are off or wrong. And it doesn't matter, because what matters is that actually it exists and you did it and other people can share that with you. And that really helped me, I think, as a creator, because I have a kind of control freak tendency. And lots of projects I did that never been seen because they were not good enough to be outside. And with Nightingale, I learned to embrace that. No, things are the way they are, and that's good enough, actually, if you tried your best. And that helped me a lot.
I'd say some of the systems that we're setting up, I think going from having no idea how to make a magazine to having what's starting to feel like a pretty professional process feels really good. And we definitely still have room to improve, but just getting those systems in place so that now for issue 3, it feels like we kind of know what we're doing. That's just such a difference from issue 1 or even issue 2.
Such a ruse.
For podcast listeners, Jason is laughing. And one last one from Emily.
Certainly the hardest thing to overcome has been the back-end logistics. As we said, we are learning, we're trying to grow, we're trying to become a better and more well-oiled machine. And there are so many things that are happening behind the scenes in terms of how we distribute and how we print. And those are all challenges that are new to me in this role. As a data journalist, I've always done the writing and the editing, and now I'm doing managing on the back end as well. So that has been a huge challenge, but also very fulfilling.
That's good to know. And then the last section in this is just favourite comment, anecdote, bit of feedback that's been received, and we'll come to you at the end, Jason, on this one. But Julie gave a quote. Somebody on Instagram DM'd her to say she saw a font and it's reminded the lady of Julie and Nightingale. And that idea that already after 2 issues, such a visible, identifiable visual identity has been established that it becomes recognisable, and that's a piece of work from Julie. So I thought that was a very nice thing that Julie shared there. But on to Emily and Claire.
My favorite comment has definitely been, you made my piece better. And as an editor, as someone who has to be very sort of precious about making sure that I'm not overstepping in my editing and reworking a piece, it is so heartwarming for someone to come back and say, thank you for making these changes and making these improvements. I've actually learned something about myself as a writer from your feedback. So that is always what I strive to do. And when I hear that, it just makes me feel very fulfilled in this role.
We've gotten a lot of great feedback on Nightingale, and that's been just so encouraging. But I think one of my favorites was a photo that someone posted on Twitter of a classroom of kids looking at the Kids Table zine from issue 1 and doing the activities in it. The Kids Table was sort of a last-minute addition to Nightingale magazine, and we weren't really sure if people were going to find it interesting or valuable. And so just seeing this class of kids actually doing the activities from that zine, it was just so encouraging to see.
And yours, Jason, was frankly just the buzz, the tweeting, the social media publishing of received my magazine, finally got this, and just this wonderful sort of manifestation of all this work that you'd pulled together.
Actually, somebody said it made going to the post office exciting. And I love
Well, James has already killed the post office experience, but yeah. Well, that's it, and obviously, you know, you're shipping these around the world, and I know that's not an insignificant task. We don't need to get into that for today, but yeah, just, you know, reaching people, the readership, getting copies, that's...
Well, that they want to share it.
Yeah.
It's not really about people sharing it for us. It's about that they want to share it to their friends. And that's where the payoff is.
Absolutely. I do want to build in times for questions. I've got my field reporter, Will, running through the thousands of questions that are coming in. But just quickly, you know, looking forwards, what's next? We know that there is an immediate prospect of issue 3 landing.
Oh my gosh, is that our new web shop?
Oh, tell us more.
This is the sales portion of the podcast. So yes, we've run this magazine. Yes, it's very difficult. But since December, we have put in an entirely new logistics company to fulfill your magazines. It used to only ship once per month. Now it'll ship within 24 hours. There'll be tracking available. We have a new printer. And additionally, this web shop on Shopify, which we really love, and it makes everything so much more practical and transparent. This also includes making sure that the pricing is ethical and affordable globally, because it turns out that certain countries just have unbelievably expensive shipping rates, and they were kind of forcing other people to pay more for things. And so, yeah, so we're super excited about the fact that we actually have an infrastructure to grow. I know it doesn't sound sexy to y'all, but in like 6 months, when we have books and posters and cool merch for the DVS and Outlier, then you'll be like, oh wow, boy, they really did something. So.
Absolutely.
Infrastructure for the win. Who would have thought that would have been the takeaway?
What a takeaway, yeah. And mindful of the time, I'm just going to skip through the next few bits to get on to the final part of today, which is the opportunity in the next 6 minutes and 45 seconds for people to ask any questions in the room today. Or, Will, our correspondent, do we have any questions from the world out there? We have so far.
No questions? They were too entertained.
One from me.
One from Will. Go on,
right.
Will.
I don't think this... Oh, here we are. So the question I had was, how do you deal with the types of content that work better in print versus online with the two platforms, such as articles with lots of interactives in the print issue or really short items designed for print on the online journal? How do you balance those?
So this is absolutely a question for Claire, and I'll just try to channel her based on working with her for the last roughly 2 years, which is that in issue 1, it was like actually a little weighted towards things that we had previously published online. And what we found out is that you just can't put that many words on a page. And so everything got so edited down that they were really functionally different articles. They were different versions of the article. And I think that's where we are now, is that the print magazine is totally bespoke, and they're just totally different animals. I mean, you don't have a word count digitally. Mm-hmm. So,
thank you, Will. Any questions from the audience?
Hello, Jason. Thank you so much. You've been working for quite a long time, and have you ever faced this situation when you feel like there are nothing like new topics and all the topics were already covered? And if yes, how do you deal with this?
Never.
Would you like to elaborate?
No, I feel like we're just getting started. I feel like there's way too many things to cover. We always have to cut stuff out because we have too many articles.
I mean, the thing is there as well, the data viz field is always evolving. Things that were rules once becomes more of a heuristic, and so it never stays still. It's always shifting, right?
Nobody wants to read another article about pie charts, about why they're bad, but every time we do end up publishing one of those, which is basically annually, it always gets a lot of traffic. And the reason why is because people are still curious about the subject. Mm. And so even very simple, rudimentary, 101 data viz topics that we're frankly not super excited about have an audience, and that audience has value. So there's even reasons for going and retreading some things. So.
Issue 4, pie charts, by the sounds of it. Any more questions from the audience in the room?
It does have a ring to it.
Oh, yes. Sorry, sir. A thin issue.
No, it's a double issue.
Thank you. Thank you both for your time. It's been an amazing podcast. Really appreciated the conversation. 2 questions. First of all, how serious is the opening to give a review on anything?
1,000%.
1,000%.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So on that tone then, for someone who has never submitted something to a magazine before, what do you look for? What does the team look for to get published in the magazine?
So we actually entertain every article that comes in. There's been a few that we turned down for various reasons, and that was really only after protracted conversation with the author. So almost everything that's ever come in has been published. There have definitely been pieces where we have worked with a person to edit, and then they just never finished the editing process. But what I always tell people is we pay everybody $50 still. If you get it in print, you get paid again. We connect you with an editor, probably one of us, to help you make your work as good as it can be. And we market it. I mean, that's pretty good, right? That's not a bad gig. So yes, please, if you want to write something, just write us. I mean, our email's on our site 1 million times.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions from the audience? Anything coming in from remote, Will, yet? Or we just sat there and wonder?
Pleased to reveal things that you're not going to, like the issue 3 cover, and demands for more reprints. There's nothing else on there.
Demands for more reprints. Okay.
More reprints are possible. We'll take that up a little bit later. I'm looking at our operations director. He says no, so you can complain to him personally. I'm kidding. He didn't say that. I'm just joking. Yeah, listen, we have lots of opportunities. We're really pleased to have the community, and we're really excited about growing and expanding the scope of the project in the next year or 2. And then there was another question about... No, there's nothing else. I'm an open book, and you've read it. Cool. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Will, for posing the questions. Thank you to the AV team, stars of this episode. Thank you very much to them.
Clap, clap, clap.
And thank you to Claire, Emily, Julie, and Jason. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To see more information about today's episode, including some links to key sites and resources mentioned, please visit my website at visualizingdata.com. Here you'll also be able to find details about my book, information about my public and private training courses, as well as over a decade of blog posts. If you've enjoyed this series, please consider liking, subscribing and spreading the word. See you next time.